the mayor of Toronto doesn't need a majority vote anymore. Actually, he can rule by minority vote. He can rule by super minority vote with just 1/3 of the vote. There is not a democratic institution or house anywhere in this country that you can actually pass laws, create programs and services for your community with 1/3 of vote. That is such an affront to democracy. And the fact that the members of the House and this government is so proud of what they're doing and hiding behind this guise of housing, it's mind-blowingly, it's mind-blowing. I'll stop there, Speaker, thank you. And I apologize if I'm getting worked up, but I care so deeply about the democratic institutions of this government, of this country. People have fought with their lives to make sure that we have the rights and freedoms here. And look what is happening. It is absolutely shameful. And what do we hear the newspapers saying about this new surprise legislation? Here's a title from the Toronto Star. The Strong Mayor legislation is a shameful act committed by shameless people. So it's not strong mayor powers anymore, it's strong man powers. It's a disembowelment of Toronto's local democracy. It's close to a dictatorship, akin to a dictatorship, similar to a dictatorship. Bill 3, as we know, was passed to create a veto for the mayor to override council. Bill 39 takes away all of that, and it actually just overrides council and local communities. Residents are now asking, do we still go to our councillor? Do we go to our mayor? Where do we stand in all of this? Residents, not just in my community of Toronto Centre, but in Toronto, in Ottawa, and coming soon to a town and a city near you. So I want to focus on this because it's so critically important that we don't lose sight of what really matters and what counts. And I cannot imagine for the life of me, what is the purpose of Bill 39? Why on earth that this government would pass such a bill and even dare propose it? Like, why not do that in this House? There's standing order papers. Why not just change the rules here? You only need 1/3. Pass whatever bill you want, whatever law you want. Yeah, you like that? Start smiling? It's a joke, isn't it? It's not a joke. Our democratic institutions mean everything. It's what defines us as Canadians, is who we are. It distinguishes us from North Korea, Iran, Iraq, and other totalitarian states. I'm going to share with you some comments from local councillors in Toronto. And I think that it's important that they're heard in this House. You may think that they're not important, but they certainly are. From one councillor, Doug Ford's Bill 39, Better Municipal Government Act 2022, released earlier today, threatens democracy in our city by allowing the mayor to propose and pass bylaws with the support of only 1/3 of council. If passed, this act would make Toronto and Ottawa the only legislative bodies in our country that don't require a 50+1% to make a vote to make a decision. The Premier, as well as the Prime Minister himself, have one vote in their respective legislatures and require a majority of members to pass any bill, including Bill 39. In other words, in a democracy, the majority rules and the minority is heard. The proposed changes undermine the basic tenets of democracy itself. The province's stated reason for this legislation is to change zoning around transit stations. This is demonstrably absurd. First, City Council has already approved moving forward with increased densities around major transit station areas to conform to the provincial direction earlier this year. Second, the province already has completed authority to change Toronto's zoning, however it wishes, through the Planning Act. If Doug Ford wants to build housing, he can do so without
just a reminder to the member that we are not using full names, the member or the Premier. Thank you.
I'll just replace Doug Ford and replace it with Premier. I'm calling on Mayor Tory to stand on behalf of the residents of Toronto and demand that our local democracy is protected. The Mayor of Toronto should be the leader of our city, not a servant of Queen's Park. Torontonians just democratically elected their city council. They will not stand for minority rule. That came from Councillor Josh Matlow, Toronto St. Paul's. Alejandra Bravo, brand new city councillor. She represents the great riding of Davenport. This is what she had to share. This is a new councillor, and there's a few more. The people of Toronto just elected 25 representatives. Last night we learned from the Mayor of Toronto and the Premier of Ontario that they believe only 8 of those voices matter. They elected 25. The Mayor went to not Doug Ford, to the Premier, to ask for the power to set policy and funding decisions without the support of 2/3 of Council. There is no precedent for this in this undemocratic move. It would mean the end of government decision-making by majority rule. The time to propose and debate a change like this would have been before the election. The people of Toronto were not informed. They had not heard about this fundamental change in how we were going to govern our city. She finishes, local government is built on collaboration and trust. There's that word trust again. I urge the Mayor to rescind this request to Premier Ford. Jamal Myers, smart, capable new councillor in Scarborough. This is his statement. Ontarians deserve a place to call home. Their city deserves a place to call home. That being said, we cannot trade away our local democracy for the sake of convenience. To be clear, Toronto is in a housing crisis, and I strongly support all reasonable tools to end it. However, allowing for the passage of bylaws with a vote of only 9 members of council, that's 8 plus the mayor, is not the way to do it. It is particularly disappointing that the mayor requested this power while making no mention of it during the campaign. For all these reasons, I strongly urge the mayor to reconsider his request. Asma Malik, she just wants to represent the riding of Spadina Fort York. This is her statement.
The member, but if you wouldn't mind, I believe your cell phone may be buzzing. Thank you.
Thank you. Asma Malik. This is her statement on Bill 39. Allowing for approval of new bylaws by only 1/3 of members of council is fundamentally undemocratic. From boardrooms to Parliament to Queen's Park itself, having decisions made with less than a majority is out of the question. Premier Ford's Bill 39 isn't about housing, it's a clear attack on local democracy. I'm disheartened at Mayor Tory's request for his overreaching power. I'm also concerned that this request was made in private without any prior discussion in public or consultation or conversation with city councillors. We have a new city council ready to work and do so collaboratively to deliver on our local shared priorities. The mayor can work with us. He can protect our local democracy, build more housing, and strengthen our community voices. There is a better way. I urge the mayor to reconsider this request. This bill is about blowing up local government. It's about undermining the voices of our community, and as I mentioned, they work in sync with Bill 3 and Bill 23. So I'm going to come back to Bill 23, because I think we need to talk about that as well, because we're going to connect them all together now. There's all sorts of claims about this being a housing issue, and then now I've heard, of course, that, where are the newcomers going to go, where are the immigrants going to live, and now I'm hearing a new narrative that pits citizens of Toronto, citizens of Ontario, with potential new people coming in. These are false statements that make no sense whatsoever, because no one is putting a fence around our city or any other city, as I can tell. People have the freedom to go as they choose. And if the settlement service organizations wanted such a bill, whether it's Bill 39, Bill 23, or Bill 3, they would have certainly asked for it. I did not hear a single settlement service saying that we needed to give the mayors of Toronto and Ottawa strong powers to build housing for them. I didn't hear that. I never heard a single newcomer settlement agency talk about stripping away the protections of the wetlands, undoing the authorities of the conservation authorities. I've never heard a single settlement service talking about undermining local city council where only 1/3 of vote gets you a law passed. Many people are fleeing countries that are run in such a manner, and yet they're coming here, and this is how we roll out the mat to welcome them. And the worst of all is that you're doing it in their name. You are saying you're doing it for them? I'm telling you right now, I don't think so. And if you can find me a single settlement service and a single immigration service, a single newcomer who says that this is what's going to build them housing, give them access to opportunities, give them access to rights of citizenship and access to a sense of belonging by giving the mayor of Toronto more power, you bring them to me. I would like to be convinced that I'm wrong. So the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing likes to patronize Toronto a lot. And lately I think he's now just, he's saying a lot of things about how every municipality is mired in red tape. Somehow municipalities have a monopoly on red tape. And he does this from his seat in Brockville. And he likes to talk about, and the member likes to talk about how, you know, it's so inefficient there. Look at how they do things over there. But if I can fix it, let's fix it this way. And this is his solution. What he always seems to ignore is that a city like Toronto continues to lead in the Crane Index, an index that's been around for decades. And Toronto has led in the Crane Index since 2015. We have over 251 cranes working on construction projects in our city. You didn't do it, City Council did it. This far outdistances the second place crane index in Los Angeles, which had 51. So compare ours, 252 to Los Angeles, second in place to 51. The City of Toronto's population growth is on track because we've already met and exceeded the urban growth strategy, a place to grow, growth plan for the greater Golden Horseshoe. And yes, there's always room for improvement, absolutely. But there's not a single instrument in this bill, or Bill 23, or Bill 3, that guarantees that the housing is to be built, and nor that it will be affordable. What you're doing is deregulating land use planning, and you're stripping away development charges, you're actually cutting taxes, and you're shifting all that responsibility and growth onto the municipalities themselves. AMO, who tried so hard to be heard by this government, actually had a lot to say. And I had a chance to tune into their sort of impromptu submission to anybody who would pipe in this afternoon at 12:30. The media was there, the NDP caucus was there, and I suspect there were members of other opposition. I didn't see a single government house member there whose name I recognize on the screen. What did AMO have to say? Let's see. AMO reminded us that growth pays for growth. AMO said that the preliminary analysis of Bill 23 indicates that there will be a transfer of up to $1 billion a year in costs from private sector developers to property taxpayers without any likelihood of improved housing affordability. You know that they're just an advocacy think tank, right? That's what they do. They look at policy, they respond to policy. That's what AMO does. And they're usually, they're pretty tame. But if you read their submission, they're anything but tame. They're hot under the collar. They are so riping angry, even if they're wearing very nice suits. They're telling you right now, this is going to be a disaster for municipalities. You are going to bankrupt them. You are going to erode life and livability for your own residents, because your residents live in cities. Every one of us live in some type of city, town, hamlet. And that's what they're saying, is that the bill's provisions designed to reduce environmental protection will benefit developers in the short term with costs to the public and homeowners that cannot be calculated. You're on a course to disaster. I'm going to really recommend that you think long and hard over the next few days, over the next few weeks of how you want to proceed with Bill 39, Bill 23. They should be withdrawn. And while you're at it, get rid of Bill 3. Thank you.
Now time for questions and answers. I recognize the member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you, Speaker. I appreciate the member opposite's comments. However, I would disagree with a lot of what she says. I come from a world where we create an environment, government creates an environment for success. We don't run everything. We are reducing bureaucracy and red tape, and ultimately it's results that count. And I think we have to all agree, we have not been getting it done. 100,000 homes this year, we needed another 50, and this was the best since '87. Whether you're looking at the Scotiabank report that says we need 1.2 million new homes, now to be G7 per capita rate, or the 10-year target that the task force and our government has set, the need for change is clear. So I would ask the member opposite, does she not agree that urgent action is needed to address Ontario's housing crisis?
Response from the member from Toronto Centre.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you for the question. I do agree that we need to take action to address the housing crisis. Where we disagree are the instruments on how to do so. I believe that we can meet the housing crisis and to address homelessness by actually building more deeply affordable housing, by making sure that the government invests in housing, and it comes with investments. The City of Toronto has just by way of example, the City of Toronto has the Housing TO plan. It is a $24 billion plan. It's asking for 3 orders of government to participate. We see that the federal government is there with some dollars. We certainly see that the city is putting up their money. But time and time again, who's missing is the provincial government. So if you want to build housing, if you want to address the housing crisis, we can also take away we can also enforce Airbnb rules, which I know will put 6,000 units right back into the market today. Things that the province can do, that the municipalities can't do, that would be helpful too.
Response. Questions? I recognize the member for London West.
Thank you very much. I want to thank my colleague, the member for Toronto Centre, for her comments. It was very helpful to hear the perspective of currently elected municipal officials from the City of Toronto with regard to this bill. And like many Ontarians, I've been struggling to try to understand how allowing Toronto City Council to pass votes with only 1/3 of council in favour, and how allowing the Minister of Municipal Affairs to appoint regional chairs in Niagara and Peel and York, how those measures have anything to do with building housing. And I wonder if she understands how the government is justifying these measures in terms of building housing in the province.
Response?
Thank you for that question. It is really difficult to get into the head of this government because I'm thinking about this from a civil society benefit perspective. So therefore the commons, like, what do we want to build in our communities so that it can be livable, so it's safe, where we can grow a family, where we can be able to grow it in place. And there's really nothing in this bill that actually even gives you a pipeline to those outcomes. What we do know is that it's a bill that's about deregulation, it's about the concentration of power, it's about upending local democracy, and the worst part of all, this is the worst part of all, it doesn't guarantee any of those outcomes that the government speaks to, because what you say and what's in the bill are 2 different things, unfortunately.
I recognize the member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
I struggle with the 2. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to ask the member opposite, because I'm going to quote her directly, because I know she was quoting a lot of people in her 20-minute speech. Good luck trying to build your tower or your condo if we don't give you the road occupancy permit. Good luck if we give you that permission to remove that single tiny little tree. It's simply not going to happen. When will the members opposite stop saying no just for the sake of saying no, as I just quoted, and stop standing in the way of building more homes to accommodate Ontario's growth?
Back to the member.
Thank you so much for raising that. I know that it's been raised before in the House. It's taken out of context. When we talk about building good and good planning and respecting local planning, including planning decisions and official plan policies and secondary plans that are crafted through our city planning department, that comment was entirely tied to good planning, what constitutes good planning. And there are good developers who follow the rules, and there are other developers that don't care about the rules. And so that comment was specifically tied to how do we reward good developers that will follow the rules and work with city planning to get the job done, because they'll tell you they don't need to go to the OLT or the OMB or whatever we're calling it these days. They can actually get it done through the planning process. Bad developers, the ones that build and disregard the rules, the ones that actually upend the planning rules, they're the ones that I was speaking to. If you don't follow the rules of the City of Toronto's planning department, then you're going to have a harder time getting through.
Further questions? I recognize the member for Davenport.
Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the member from Toronto Centre for their comments today on this legislation. It was excellent. And I also just want to say, I think we can all appreciate in here that you have probably been responsible for more housing development and good planning than any other person probably in this room as a city councillor. So thank you for the amazing work that you've done to build housing and make sure that there was also deeply affordable housing. But you mentioned in your comments the impact of getting rid of education development charges, and this being something I think that that AMO had raised earlier today as well. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about the impact that citizens, residents of communities in some of the ridings of the government members opposite, what kinds of issues they could be raising when these services disappear.
Response?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that question to the member from Davenport. When we're building and intensifying, which we do in cities, we do it all the time, and you're right by noting that we have built more in Toronto Centre than many communities combined together. What residents are looking for is they're looking for the livability of it. And I've raised this before because our chief planner has spoken about this, and I know he spoke in the committee today, and he raised exactly the same thing. Meeting the growth target hasn't been our problem. The challenge for us now is that we have a struggle in making sure that the cities are livable, the neighborhoods are livable, because the pace of development has outpaced livability. So therefore, our wait list for recreation centers, our wait list for libraries, our wait list for swimming classes, our wait list for every single possible service, including the fact that our classrooms are now 40 in size, including the fact that we don't have enough playground spaces that have been properly built. We are the most parkland deficient in all of Canada, right here in Toronto Centre. We just don't have enough because we weren't able to keep up with the pace of demand. And you're about to make it worse by taking away the development charges.
For the questions, I recognize the member for Scarborough-Agincourt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaker, at its core, this legislation is very simple. It will help us support efficient local decision-making and give elected officials the tools they need to remove barriers, stalling developments on the housing, transit, and infrastructures Ontarians critically need. On a personal experience, as a resident of Scarborough-Agincourt for 32 years, the residents of Scarborough are frustrated with the decision-making process in the City of Toronto. The downtown councillors, they hold the rest of the city hostage for their whims. The proposed legislation, if passed, will give local legislature elected by Ontarians the extra tools they need to get shovels in the ground and help us prepare for Ontario's future growth. Why doesn't the opposition trust Ontarians to choose efficient local leaders? Thank you.
Back to the member from Toronto Centre for response.
Thank you for that question. When City Council was a larger council in 2018, before the ward boundary changes came in, there were 44 seats on council plus one for the mayor. 3 city councillors represented the downtown core, hardly what I would call running the town. After the board boundaries changed, we had 25 members of City Council. There were still only 3 members of the downtown core. It is absolutely untrue, categorically untrue, that the downtown city councillors are somehow running Scarborough or any other part of Toronto simply because mathematically it doesn't add up. And so if Scarborough is underserved, it's because it has not been keeping up with the rate of the pace of investments, and that has a lot to do with the legacy city, when that city was more deeply invested in building roads and infrastructure that supported roads, and less so for libraries, community centers, swimming pools.
It's now time for further debate. I recognize the member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Speaker.